Good day, everyone. I am so happy you could join us. My name is 3, the Kemite, and this is the Mojo of Audio. Glad you could stick around, everyone. I know it's been a while since I've posted, but I've been a little busy. Now, what I wanted to do today was talk about my signal chain for my bass guitar. And I guess I just kind of wanted to illustrate that because it's a very inexpensive signal chain. And I get very good results out of it. Now, this is my signal chain. You may use another signal chain. You may be looking for some ideas about what to do with your signal chain. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a look at it, or allow you to take a look at it, and then we'll come back here and we'll talk about it. So hold on just one moment. So here we are in the sound room, and we're taking a look at my bass setup. So see if I can get a whole shot of it. There we go. Okay, so let's get a closer look. Now this is my front end. Now I normally use, let me see if I can focus that in there. Hold on. No, can't quite. Well, can't quite get the focus in, but this right here, this piece right here, this is an Ampeg preamp. Now, I don't use it as a preamp necessarily. I use it as the very front of my signal chain to EQ up my bass, kind of like using it as an active onboard preamp for my bass. And I run that to the Tube MP Studio. This is a mic pre that gets a rather bad rap. We'll talk about that later on. And this is my amp. This is an acoustic old school B100. They're new models. This has a 15-inch speaker. This could have easily been a 40 watt, maybe even a 25 watt. I probably don't like anything smaller than a 12-inch speaker. 10 inches is good when I have multiple 10 inches. I like those a lot, but if I only have one, it's not enough. This amp does not have a horn. Now, that mic down there is actually a tube mic. By the way, did I say? Well, I did say this was a tube MP, but this is a tube mic pre, and this is a tube microphone. And it captures the sound off of the speaker. If you notice, I put it up flush. And we're going to go out there and see what I run all of this to. But I just wanted you to take a look. I was playing a Fender Precision that goes right there, but that's out in the control room. This is my Fender Jazz with Bartolini pickups. I like to bite on it. I have a Fender Strat and a Fender Tele. The Tele's in blue, the Strat is in, I don't know what color that is, burgundy maybe. And then, of course, I have two Paul Reed Smiths. One's a soap bar pickup. We call those P90s. And the other one is a dual humbucker. And, well, we'll talk about that on another episode. And, of course, there is my guitar amp over there, which is the Fender Deluxe. So anyway, let's take a walk back in here. Now, we just had a recording session, so there are chords all over the place in here, which there usually are. And let me walk you out here. The light's out here. Tripod. The big man's chair. This is the console. This is what's on my console. That's my Fender Precision bass. That's the one you just heard. But what I wanted you to see was this universal mic pre. And that's what I'm using. That's what I'm using as the in part of my sound. It has two tubes in it, one for the input, one for the output. I want you to notice here that I have the boost off. I have the low cut off. I barely have any volume. And I have my gain set to 0 or neutral. Any of the other controls don't really matter that much. This is the old school M610 Universal Audio. They don't sound that different from the current models that are out now. I just love vintage. I'm an old guy, and I love old gear. So anyway, we're going back to the video. So that was the signal chain, and the way that all works out, why those pieces are the way they are, the bass actually runs directly to the Ampeg EQ that I'm using as EQ. I'm not really using it as a preamp. I'm not driving it very hard. The volume is just slightly up, and the volume just kind of drives the Art preamp. But back to the Ampeg. The Ampeg has a little bit of mid-range boost. It has the ultra-high and the ultra-low buttons, both pressed in. And the reason, well, I'll come back to that. I'll tell you what. I'll come back to that. But they go into the Art Tube MP Studio. Now, Art mic pre's get a bad rap because they are essentially what one would call cheap. You can get them on eBay for about $35 or $40 or something like that. Now, what I've done with that one is I've changed out the tube from the generic Chinese tube. Not saying that Chinese means generic. I'm just saying it's Chinese and it's generic. I've changed that out to what Fender uses currently today as their tubes. They're not very much, about $40 on eBay. Most of the stuff I buy on eBay. Just tip for you, there are a lot of people that say never buy a tube on eBay, but I have always known exactly what I was looking for, and if it wasn't that big of a risk, I would go on ahead and get it on eBay. But that's beside the point. The Tube MP is completely clean. It doesn't have any sound coloration, and a lot of that is because it doesn't actually have its own transformer. It doesn't really matter what that means, but transformers usually mean color. And it doesn't have that. It's just all electronics going straight through, but it does use that tube to drive it. And so what I get is a tube front end. It's a typical type of tube on the front end. And that all goes to my B100 acoustic amplifier. Now, why that amplifier? Number one, that amplifier is ridiculously inexpensive. I think I bought that at a pawn shop. And what I know to be true about acoustics currently is their sound is very neutral. It doesn't add any extra oomph or anything like that. It's a low bass sound. It's going to put out whatever you give it, and it has a 15-inch speaker with no horn. Now the 15-inch speaker just sounds low. Horns usually give some character to overall bass sound, but in this case we're just using that 15-inch speaker. Now here's the thing. All of that kind of runs to a tube microphone, and the tube microphone in this case is a Rode NTR, and the NTR does have a custom tube, and I think I put a Genelec tube in it or something like that. And what NTRs do is they're kind of known for a little bright top end. It also does not have a transformer, so no color, no real color to speak of, I would say. But it does give a tube flavor to the overall sound. Now remember, the Ampeg is solid state. The ART tube going in on the front end, the ART tube MP is a tube, okay, and the mic that the speaker is running to is a tube mic. So now I have tubes in two separate stages of my bass sound. By the way, the Ampeg, the acoustic, all the knobs, the volume, the frequency, the low, the mid, the high, and everything in between is all set to 0. It's notched up at 12 o'clock. The only thing that's not notched up there is the output volume. And the output volume is turned down after I dialed in all the sound that I wanted. I turned the output volume down so I would not overdrive my microphone. Now I have a lot of tube microphones, and I chose that one for a reason, and that's because of that high-end bump. High-end bump is kind of what was a mid-high bump is kind of what gives a lot of bass amps their character, but I've kind of taken care of that in the EQ of my signal chain with that Ampeg EQ. Now all of that runs out to my universal audio, and that is a tube mic pre. A tube mic pre that has tubes in two stages, the input stage and the output stage. Both of those are a little different tubes, I should say. So they kind of have together, they have a very particular flavor, that universal audio sound. Now, I have not changed the tubes in the universal audio. I'm in no big hurry to do that. I'm happy with the sound the way it is. However, I may decide to change later on to mullered tubes, not new old stock tubes, but the new mullered tubes. They don't really sound drastically different than new old stock. They tend to keep that bassy bump, that low mid bump that mullered is so well known for, but that may be a conversation for a different day as well. All of that, of course, runs to my recording track, and in that way I tend not to do a lot of EQing on bass because it goes in sounding exactly the way that I want it to. So I said all that to say that you may want to experiment with your bass sound. A lot of times you're not doing a real bass like me. You might be doing a synthesizer bass. But the same concept works. If you want a little bit of a different flavor, organic, maybe even lo-fi, you could play around with that type of setup and get some really interesting results for your bass sound. Now, the way I run it all pretty quiet. I don't overdrive it. There's a little bit of bite in there. I don't know if you can hear that in the recording or on YouTube, because YouTube kind of compresses this stuff and you can't hear much difference anyway. But there's a little bit, just a slight bit of breakup in there, but I could break it up even more. I could break it up by driving the tube MP more. I could break it up by driving the microphone a little bit more. But the way that I would probably break it up is to take that gain that's in the universal audio, instead of running it on neutral, I'd probably run it at +5 or whatever the other setting is for a little bit more gain there, and let it break up right there. By the way, usually when I'm playing a bass or a guitar, well, usually when I'm playing a bass, the guitar is a little bit different. But when I'm playing a bass, I, personally for me, I just turn all the knobs up. That's how I roll. That's the way I like the sound. It's nice and consistent. I don't have to guess about it. If I wind up having to do a retake, or I have to do a punch in or something like that. So everything that I have on my bass setup is optimized for everything being turned all the way up. Okay, so now that I have that out of the way, if you have any questions about how I do the bass setup, get into some things like, what kind of strings might I be using, how often do I change them, what kind of chords do I use, because chords are very, very, very important, or anything else, any other questions that you may have about any of your gear, go on ahead and comment in the bottom. I try to get back to every single comment with a real answer, hopefully not just a generic answer, unless you're giving me a thumbs up saying, hey, okay, and I'll say, hey, okay, back. But, if you want to know something, feel free to chime in. If you found this video helpful for you, let me know that, and we'll do more, because I'll be doing these once a week, and hopefully next week we'll talk about why I choose the specific gear that I choose in my recording studio. Nah, I'm not sure about that. I may decide to do my guitar setup. Yeah, anyway, we'll figure that out then. But in the meantime, once again, my name is 3. I am the Kemite. This has been the Mojo of Audio.